Bring it. AM 560 KBLU. It's Thursday morning. Yeah. Oh, yeah. You're on camera. Just you, not Alfonso. He's off camera. AM 560 KBLU. Russ Clark back with you. Of course, Sheriff Leon Wilmot's with me on camera. Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
How are you?
You didn't tell me there was BDI.
Yeah. Do you mean to cover? I mean, you look good, man. I think you're good.
You've always told me I got a face for radio only, and now you put a camera in there.
I think that was the other way around.
I don't get it.
I think I got told that. And of course,
you should put it on Alfonso.
Alfonso, tell me your last name again.
Zavala.
Zavala.
Yes, sir.
I mean, it's on your shirt. I can see it. I just want to make sure I got it Zavala.
Want to borrow these?
No.
Okay.
I can see that part since this stuff here. You know how that disease goes, right? I mean, I can see across the room. I can't see close.
You're right. Yeah.
But I'll get by.
No, my camera, I got to behave.
You are on camera. And Johnny, we just have the sheriff. Can you make it to where Johnny's still here, even though I stole his mic? He says,
"Oh, there you go.
There we go."
No, you haven't. Just you got to turn it the other way. I want both of them.
Oh, you want both?
Yeah, a little bit more. Right there. Oh,
perfect.
You got them both. So
no, we can't see nothing.
Facebook, it's both. Now I got a call yesterday from a concerned citizen.
Okay.
About police training, police responsiveness, the type of training. Do they get the same everywhere? And of course, there's always been this idea that I say always, Obama really pushed, federal training of police. Yeah, and because they act stupidly. I still remember that day, police acting stupidly. I never used that line on you.
And I remember that too, because he was pushing a national police agenda, and the first thing that he did was come up with police reform. You remember that?
Right, because they're not well trained.
In his eyes.
Yes.
So he felt that it was more important that, this country look at a national police.
You guys wouldn't be so racist if you were.
Biggest mistake this country ever made,
Oh, my God. I think, of course, local is always.
Well, when you hear some of the information from Alfonso, I mean, he's our director for the police academy here. So when you do a comparison and the information that he's got, and I don't want to take away from all of his info, but I think it's going to surprise a lot of your listeners as to the quality of training, the types of training.
I have the
comparison.
I have the phones off so we can talk for a while and maybe get the questions answered before they ask them.
Oh, you bet.
Yeah, before we get sidetracked. But and Alfonso, it's the local one here. Has that been 2 years now? 3 years?
It's been 2 years now that
2 years.
We started a full-time academy. It was a need that was needed here locally, and I was still with the sheriff's office at that time, and we approached the college with the Yuma Police Department saying, hey, we need a local police academy. The cost was getting out of control, trying to send our officers out of town to train, trying to keep that local money in the community.
Well, and that was not only that. I mean, like you said, the cost, because I would assume, Sheriff, when you send them to Phoenix, there's a hotel bill involved. I mean,
Well, I'm trying to actually find an academy that had open seats was a big problem for us too, because you've got a number of academies throughout the state. So you got one in Narda, which is up in Prescott. You've got one in Florence. You've got one out of Phoenix Regional, and
Tucson. And at $20,000 a pop.
Yeah.
Trying to send an officer or deputy.
And you're looking at, you have to take care of per diem. You have to take care of the fuel to get back and forth. They're away from their families for a long time. And then Chief Leacan and I had sat down. That was a big thing, because AWC Academy has always had a reserve academy here and that's the one that I attended when I was in the Marine Corps to become a certified peace officer through the college, but it was part-time. And our thing was like, look, we already have the syllabus. You already have the quality instructors because they're all local. Mm-hmm. So they have that local knowledge of the geography, as well as the local pulse on the community and what our community needs versus a large metropolitan area, which these other academies tend to focus on. And that was a big push with Chief Leacan and I was, you're now going to get that rural pulse training for law enforcement officers, and they get to stay here. So we're saving taxpayer money, and they're working on their education, and it's grown since then too through Alfonso and Ratika's
I like
jumping
her.
in. She's
she does a nice job for this college.
Yeah. So and that's why I felt it was important, especially for Alfonso to be here, because he was such a big part of putting this whole program together at the college
That-
from the very beginning.
AWC still has a program on their campus too, right? Or did everything move to the academy?
So everything's now at the academy.
Okay.
So we run a full-time academy, a part-time academy, and a detention academy now.
Mhm.
So it's grown from being a part-time academy 3 years ago to a
Now-
full-time academy. Yes,
Are those classes at Ray Kroc there, where you took that facility?
correct. And that's where we're holding them currently right now.
Okay, and so nothing's held on the campus anymore.
Nothing is held on campus. We go on campus for certain things, for Virtua system that we use at Border Patrol houses there at AWC.
Okay,
It's a simulator for firearms, but that's what we use.
And we are working on. We got with in fact, it was Jonathan Lyons, one of the county board of supervisors, was a big help in this, is getting funds to actually build a police academy, a multi-tiered, basically a public safety center out at AWC. And this last year, we were able to get $7 million, and the college said whatever we can get from the state, they will match. So we actually got that accomplished this last year
okay.
through the state, which is awesome. To get a public safety center out at AWC would be awesome.
Now, I know it's local and all that. Do you get people attending the academy from outside the Yuma County?
We do.
yeah.
So we've got a total of 18 different agencies that are using AWC: Coconino, Flagstaff, Kingman, Prescott. We've got it throughout the entire state.
Plus our tribal partners.
And I would
Mhm.
assume they
Mhm.
prefer coming to Yuma than going to metropolitan areas.
They do.
Okay.
We've got a lot of us. Sheriff up in Coconino County has been a huge supporter
Mhm.
of sending his troops down here because he sees the different way we're instructing. They understand that we've got more of a rural area, and the way we train is a whole lot different than
Well,
local.
and that's part of the reason I really made the call, because the question was, where's our training coming from, and are our police officers being trained,
Mhm.
and who sets the standard?
So the standard is set by Arizona Post, Arizona Peace Officers in Training. It's out of Phoenix. They go through we were the first academy about 6 months ago to transition to the new curriculum.
Okay.
It had been 583 for quite some time, and it just moved up to 683 hours. However, us at AWC have gone way over and beyond that. We're at over 880 hours of training that we do.
So they set the minimum standards.
They set the minimum standards. We set up what we believe and need. And it's not a we as in myself. It is a board that we go out and talk to all the chiefs, sheriffs, instructors. What is it that you need? What is it that we need? How can we make this better? We don't concentrate on just how I want to run an academy or how AWC wants to run an academy. We want everybody's input on this to make it better.
When you say everybody's input, where does that input come from?
It comes from the command staff, from the sheriffs, from the chiefs, from across the board. And it's not just our locals, it's throughout the state, all our users.
So, and I'm asking Alfonso if local groups or local people wanted to say, I've got some input, some things I like, I don't like. Are we doing these things? You're open to all those kinds of input.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Whatever's, I believe in a shared issues. Let's talk about them. Let's see how we can help and how we can make it better.
And what you do with the academy, of course, and we understand the academy is for those police officers or sheriffs, deputies that to get trained so they can go do the job.
Yeah.
Do what you do filter into those departments? And if so, only by the new guys? What about the guys who've been there 10 years? Are they going to pick up on some of the new information, the new directions, the new techniques?
Oh yeah, that ASPOST actually puts out the updated training all the time. So officers have to maintain a minimum amount of proficiency, and some of that training is mandatory. So every year you have to have so many hours of proficiency training and so many hours of continued officer training that they have to meet to be able to keep their certification as a certified peace officer in the state. Much like your EMTs, they have to go through training constantly to maintain their proficiency. Law enforcement officers are the same.
Do they come to the academy to do that, or is that done in their departments?
A lot of it has to do with the agencies. Some classes are put together. Local Yuma has a scope, Select Council on Progressive Enforcement, and that's a contingent of all the law enforcement agencies. And because not one single entity can afford to pay for instructors to come in for some of the specialized training, scope, if a tribe has been a great partner on bringing in different instructors that offer different courses. So it's a conglomeration. And then so you have large training opportunities here in Yuma, as well as doing just off of the computer and going through those courses to keep up your cert.
So a small, like Welton is a small, but they would incorporate their semi-annual or annual training, whatever they do, along with the academy, or
we all share it.
office?
We all
We'll
share it. So yeah, so any entity that's looking at bringing in some instructor to put on some type of training offers it up for everybody to come and attend. And oftentimes we all partner together. So it's and that the city has been a big part of that on putting together the larger trainings, as well as the tribe. So officers can go do that. So the tribe even offers training for cross certification, because, you know, in Arizona, tribes are sovereign land.
Right.
And those officers have a certification for tribe as well as post, which is for the whole state. So they're cross certified, and they'll oftentimes offer up that training for local entities that are in those areas for where the tribal nations are, to actually be also certified to enforce tribal law.
You know, a lot of people would assume that tribal police or the police down at AWC or whatever are just glorified security guards.
And they're not.
I know. I have to explain to my, you better be careful, my friend.
The tribal nations are certified AWC police, and they're often agencies that also come and assist us each and every day. And that's what a lot of rural, I mean, you look at it, there's 333 million people in the United States.
Right.
But when you look at the numbers, it's only like 667,000 police officers throughout the whole of the country.
That's it.
That's it. So, and these were numbers that were obtained through the college down in Cochise County. So when you look at people in leadership roles like Obama did, it's kind of disheartening for them to actually come out and say, we need police reform in our national police. Okay, so you look at 333 million, only 660,000 police officers throughout the whole of the United States. And you look at how many sacrifice for doing that job each and every year.
Right.
And for leadership. And then you get this other administration that we're under now pushing defunding police.
Well, you heard about that.
It's kind of, it's aggravating that you would have people elected into office that would speak like that, because that only promotes individuals to go out and commit crimes by saying that kind of stuff.
Correct.
And, you know, when you look at the 600, and I wanted to put this out there, you know, with that many officers, 696,000.
696. Okay.
That's 61.5 million interactions that law enforcement has roughly with people every year. So, you know, when the mainstream media promotes this anti-law enforcement defund reform, it's a false narrative as far as I'm concerned. If anybody needs to be defunded and reformed, it's Congress, in my eyes, because they're pushing a false agenda from their personal and political ideologies, which interferes with enforcing the rule of law. Look at California, when they're not even arresting people for doing shopliftings and going in and stealing in broad daylight.
Right.
That just promotes criminal activity. And now you see the results of that in those areas. You would not believe how many Californians come here to spend a holiday and end up in our jail because they did something that they shouldn't be doing.
Oh, seriously? Some of that attitude comes right with them.
Yeah, they bring it here, and then they get surprised that they're going to our jail because it's something that they can get away with in California. They only give them a ticket.
I was thinking about getting a junket together, maybe renting a bus, take a bunch of people over to California, shoplift for the day, and then come back. but I was talked out of it.
Whoever did that, they did a good job.
They did me a favor. We'll be right back. AM 560 KBOU. Russ Clark back with you. Sheriff Leon Wilmot.
Good
It's taking
morning,
the time to come in here. It's nice.
Absolutely, it's been
Get
a
you out
while.
straight. You know, I'm still mad at you, by the way.
Oh,
You know, during these holidays, and I've asked you before, and you're always rude to me, but I know you're setting up DUI checkpoints. You've never told me where.
well, I wanted to be a surprise.
That's nice.
That's nice. Yeah, there you go.
Alfonso Zavala is with me, and of course, director of the academy here
Morning,
locally. And the questions are coming up about training, who does it, and what the standards are, and all those kind of things. If somebody has, if you feel like the police, the sheriffs, or whatever it is, mishandled something, and I'm sure a lot of people think that every day, but if something like you're concerned about the local police force is not professional,
No, I-
not doing it, where do you really go with that? Where do you go?
Well, most agencies, as you'll see, the accountability for officer conduct is paramount.
Yeah.
Especially here, So that's why we have you can call in a complaint. You can actually get on our website and actually submit a commendation or a complaint in regards to an officer's conduct.
Okay.
And that goes not only straight to me, but it also goes straight to our command staff who look into that right away. Typically, they'll call that individual and say, okay, what was the circumstance, and get more information. And then they look into each and every case, because there's a fundamental difference, obviously, between sheriffs and police, but you still have to have that professional officer out there representing your agency.
I didn't know there was a fundamental difference.
There is. So as a sheriff, I'm elected,
Yeah.
and then those officers that work out on the street are actually deputized by me to be able to perform that duty.
Right.
City chiefs are appointed by a city council, and thus they are controlled by the council on what they want those officers to concentrate on in their city areas.
So nobody controls you.
The people control me. and that's the thing is,
I
like
that.
as
I mean,
as a sheriff,
you report to the people.
You report to the people,
Yeah.
not a council, not the board of supervisors. You work for the community. So, and oftentimes you get into individuals not understanding that different dynamic.
Yeah.
And that part is important, because the city council, and you've seen a lot of this during the riots and everything, that the councils for police agencies were taking away those officers' ability to protect themselves and their community by taking away all their
They were putting
less than lethal abilities,
policy changes
because of politics being interjected into public safety.
and
As a sheriff, you're controlled by the people.
right.
They're not.
So be careful who you
those
vote for.
officers are
Right.
not going to be
But you perform the same duties as far as traffic control.
absolutely the
like
same
that.
duties.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
But just a different focal point.
Exactly. So, and the bottom line is that if an individual has a concern about an officer's conduct, then they need to contact that agency, because it will be looked into. And if there's training issues that need to be addressed, that's taken care of. If it's
What if it's a small agency with 4 or 5 people or something? What do? Contact the local political body? That
if you don't get anywhere, my recommendation is always try to get a hold of the chief or the command staff,
Right.
and bring that to their attention. And then if that doesn't work, then you want to step it up. You want to take it up further. And with the city, that would be the mayor, the city council. Everybody has board meetings, so you can address it there in a public forum. So
doesn't every criminal have a complaint against the police officer that handled him meanly or roughly?
not
I mean,
all.
It's a no.
Not all. No.
They don't know. I
No.
just assumed that was an automatic. I'm going to complain.
No,
That-
no. So much has come so far for so many years. I mean, you look at if somebody has a complaint. I mean, when I started, we bought our own tape recorders and stuck them in our pocket because of officer complaints.
Right.
That people would try to bring against you to get out of what they got in trouble for. So we actually bought our own tape recorders, the mini cassette recorders.
That probably helped.
Then
a
they
lot.
came out with the digital ones, and then now with body cams and vehicle cameras, all of that stuff has
And-
basically stopped.
and everybody with an iPhone in your face.
Exactly. So there's so much media out there that you have for using in law enforcement that helps, because we all know a picture's worth 1,000 words, right? What's a video worth?
More.
And it just
worth a
keeps
conviction,
everything
hopefully.
on the, and the officers realize that, and they know that camera is their best friend, because that has stopped so many officer complaints.
So on another issue, this issue, and I know it just went through through the state, the legislature, on people that record police actions have to stay back, I think 6 feet or 8 feet or something like that. And I was like, well, that makes sense, especially if you're handling something.
It does. If you've got
you can't have somebody 6 inches behind you.
No,
That makes you nervous.
And you don't know who that person is, and,
Right.
and that officer's trying to conduct their investigation, whatever it might be, and you don't want to put another person jumping in there.
But you're not opposed to the tapings.
No, our officers, we get it all the time. You actually have some individuals here locally that make it a point to go out and do that. That's what they put on the YouTube.
Right.
It's our opinion that anything that happens out in the general public, people can videotape. They can take pictures of.
You have no expectation of privacy out on the sidewalk.
No, none at all. And we get them at our agencies too.
And we do that in the academy. We train our new recruits, our new troops, with people with cameras out there. So when we do scenarios, we do other kind of training. We will stick people out there with cameras, with iPhones, with, on a traffic stop, and having people walk up to them and trying to get them to understand that this is now common. You will have somebody recording you. You will have somebody yelling at you on the side of the road. So we interject all this stuff into our training. So when they go on the road, they understand, hey, this is a true thing.
So if you have a question about, am I going to be treated fairly? It's fine to turn on a camera.
Absolutely.
Protect yourself.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
And it's in the training. It's not unexpected. What if a police officer tells you to turn it off? Does that ever happen? I mean, it's not your training, but if that happens, is that a problem?
If you're the arrestee, they'd probably tell you to turn it off because you're going to jail. But
well, no,
each and every circumstance is different.
Okay.
You got to look at where you're at. Are you on somebody's private property? Because you cannot have other people coming into somebody's private property.
No, what I'm saying, just like on a traffic stop, if somebody wants to record the whole traffic stop, police officer wouldn't have a problem with that, would they?
No,
Okay.
So long as you're not impeding traffic and you're not creating a problem for the traveling public to get around or interfere with the situation at hand. But I mean, that's
and the other biggest thing during that traffic stop is, as long as you're following all the commands, all the questions, everything that's going on in that traffic stop, you'll be fine.
Yeah.
That's the biggest
Generally.
thing. Correct. Yeah. A lot of the questions come up. Well, why did this happen? No, if the person being pulled over did what they were supposed to do, everything would have been fine.
Well, and we hear that argument sometimes with some of these incidences where there's been some unfortunate outcomes, where if that person wasn't fighting, drunk, alcohol related, swinging at cops, he'd still be alive. And of course, always it can become a nationwide controversy because of race. How do you train again for that?
We don't train for race.
Okay.
There is no color.
It's kind of like in the Marine Corps. Everybody's green.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying?
You don't train for race. You don't say like if you pull over minority, be extra careful.
We don't train for any of that. It is every traffic stop you go in there and you do the same thing. Obviously, like Sheriff said, no traffic stop is routine.
Right.
But green, white, brown, purple, it is a traffic stop. There has been a reason for you to be pulled over, and we're going to handle it in that manner.
Most of the time, you don't even know who's behind the wheel because of window tint and everything else. So
it's hard to tell.
It all has to do with the infraction that was observed by the officer at the time.
Yeah.
So,
but you have to know that it's out in the social conscious that there is a feeling of some groups that, well, because I'm of a certain race or if I'm of a certain gender or something, I'm going to be treated much differently.
It's unfortunate. I mean, that's a lot coming from, you look at law enforcement as a whole. We talked about that earlier, the amount of officers and the amount of agencies. I mean, there's 3,083 sheriffs across the whole of the United States. So when you look at law enforcement, and it was done by this administration and prior to, is, that 88% of law enforcement throughout this country is rural. 200 officers or less.
That's amazing.
Okay, so where are you getting all of this kind of comments is from large metropolitan areas
Yeah.
that have the issues, and then the mainstream media pushes this broad brush stroke
That's profile
against, yeah, which is something that they wanted everybody to quit doing, and you had to provide proof that you went through profile training and all this other stuff.
Yeah.
So, you know, and we talked about profiling years ago. It's like,
Right.
everybody profiles every day.
Right.
You profile driving down the street, which gas station has the cheapest gas right now. It's all profile.
Right.
But there was that mainstream media push, and everybody that jumped in on that is now turned around, and now what are they doing? They're profiling police as a whole as being all the same, and when it's not true.
So I don't get any special white privilege if you pull me over then.
No.
Okay.
I told you I can give you a room upgrade.
Yes, you have. I've been trying to cash in on that white privilege. I'm see if I could do that. But
yeah, no.
But it is conversation during the academy. I mean, that is a conversation.
You know, it is a conversation because you see it. We've got to prepare these young recruits
so
for all
to whatever's going to happen.
To whatever's going to happen, and that is conversation. We look at case law. We look at current activity that is occurring in our nation. I do got to say that, you know, thankfully, Yuma as a whole has a different outlook at law enforcement.
It does.
Well, and that's part of the 88% across the whole of the United States that feels the same.
All right.
You know, they're engaged with their community, and their community is engaged with their law enforcement agencies and their communities. So we all live, work, and play here. I mean, you look at Yuma, you got what, 14 different law enforcement entities
I know.
that are here?
I didn't know that until that plane crashed years ago, and all of a sudden every car had lights on it. I'm like, where are these guys coming from?
Yeah.
FBI? What are we doing? I didn't know we had that many.
And we all, because of being remote and rural, we all work together really well.
Yeah, now that you can communicate.
Yeah.
We'll be right back. You guys are sticking around.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
I'll be back.
We're gonna take all the time you got.
AM 560 KBLU. Sheriff Leon Wilmot is with me. And Alfonso Zavala. Yeah, Zavala.
That's right.
I think I got that. With the director of the academy.
Exactly. And that's why we've jumped up the academy over there, because one of the things that they approached us on was the detention academy.
Okay.
Because we've held the detention academy at the sheriff's office for many, many years, over 105, I think academies we put through down there at our jail. So we partner with AWC, because part of the thing is getting individuals into law enforcement. You can't obviously be a cop unless you're 21 or older.
Okay.
In the state of Arizona.
You know, I'm
right.
good.
And we don't have an age limit as long as you meet all the physical standards. But
we might have to struggle there a little bit.
But we can bring in individuals into the law enforcement through our jails starting at 18 years old.
Okay.
So we moved our academy out to AWC, which opens it up to other agencies throughout the state of Arizona as well. And that's something that I got to commend Alfonso and his team on putting together too. We just had
we had the first academy graduate. Got a
out of AWC. But it keeps them local. Again, a lot of agencies send their personnel for detention academies to the state DOC academy.
Mm-hmm.
But running a prison and running a jail is two different mantras altogether. So it helps to put a better training that's associated with running a jail versus a prison.
And the difference is just the time or whatever. I mean, sometimes
the amount of time that they're in jail, the amenities that they get are allowed to have versus what you don't get in.
You're not
jail.
going to do sex change surgeries over at the detention. You have to go to jail for that.
Prison would be something you'd have to check into.
Check in on that one.
You know, our average think the stay is maybe 26, 27 days.
Yeah, you can't get surgery that quick.
No, not going to happen. So, but I mean, it's a city within a city that you're operating. So you've got to run a kitchen, you got to run a laundry, you've got to have medical, you know, to address. You got to have a dentist, you got to have a barber, you know, you got to have a teacher, because we do have juveniles that are in our jail that have been charged as adults. You still got to keep them without sight and sound of other adult inmates, but they're still in my jail.
So they get a private room.
they do get a private room and private area altogether.
All right.
Especially if it's
Safety.
male and a female, then those have to be separated too. So it's kind of a beast, but being able to do that and open it up to our other agencies
What do you
here,
do with a male that
and-
identifies as a female?
they get a whole different area too.
You haven't got that yet, have you?
Well, yeah,
You have.
we've been seeing that for many, many years.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's not something that's new
All right.
for us. So typically you follow the science. If you're born a male,
You go with the biological.
so all of that's taken into consideration.
Okay.
So yeah, but for the most part, like I say, out of 500, I might have 60 that are sentenced in the jail.
Oh.
So everybody else that's in the jail is waiting to go through the court process.
Yeah, waiting for their attorneys.
So yeah, exactly, and waiting on the court calendar and everything else. So when you talk about the federal and the local law enforcement, one of the things that I found interesting in talking with Alfonso is you do get a large contingent of our federal partners now that are getting out of the federal law enforcement, trying to get into local.
Mhm.
And one of my questions to his was for your public is, what is the difference in the training cadre from our federal law enforcement partners to getting into state?
Arizona Western College was approved
Just stay close in front of the
just
mic, yeah.
recently by Arizona Post to be the only academy to kind of pilot this program of Border Patrol agents that were looking to leave the federal side and go state. In less than 200 hours, actually translated from their federal academy to a state academy. So they're still looking at 15, 16 weeks of state academy trying to transition over because of the policing. It's different. You got state, federals is federal, and they're working about immigration. So that was a conversation we had, and with this current administration, a lot of the feds were trying to seek something else because they didn't want to be mandated vaccines and stuff like that.
So who pays the training? Does the individual pay, or does the department pay?
So that's something that
Good
we
question.
hit on.
Yeah.
That we went out searching.
Typically, agencies would have to pay.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Now, unless you're self-sponsored through the Reserve Academy, then you would pay the college for that.
All right.
So,
But
like I was in the military when I went through back in the mid 80s. So the military would pay because it's a college, you get college credits.
Right.
So the military would pay a portion, then you would pay the rest. But there's something that Alfonso and his team did that.
What'd you do, Alfonso?
we went out and found some federal money that was out there.
Okay.
And we partnered with Arizona at Work.
Absolutely.
They have been great partners where there is money for training through a secondary education. And with the guidance of Ratika and a few others, we were able to find this money and partner with them. So it's costing our local agencies $0 to send their officers to the academy.
Taking advantage of the funds out there already.
Absolutely. We were even able to go further, and I was able to explore this with the entire state. So we are getting deputies from Coconino County that Arizona at Work is paying tuition, room, lodge, everything down here in Yuma. So we are taking federal funds that are out there that have been lost for years.
Right.
and
Or spent somewhere else.
And now we're bringing them into Yuma County.
So it's bringing your tax dollars back.
Good.
And
Is what it's doing. And God bless Arizona at Work for partnering with AWC and all the work that went. It's no easy task to do what they have to do to be able to accomplish that out at the college. And Alfonso was a pusher on that. And other academies through the state are going, whoa, how are you able to do this?
How are you doing this?
And that's a help to the county, especially with the budget. And we know things are tight. So that's just another way to show that our local academies.
And we've saved over $2 million.
We do appreciate that.
Yeah.
Taxpayers.
Taxpayers.
Question on Facebook here. Is the training a requirement across the nation, or do individual entities like town councils determine the requirements of who they hire?
You have a minimum requirement.
Even in the nation?
Throughout any agency.
Okay.
You would have to have that. And a lot of that minimum requirement is established through that state, like ASPOST, Arizona Peace Officer Standards and Training. they establish what the minimum requirements are for you to be able to actually go to an academy and be certified in the state as a peace officer. So it's a background, it's your physical, then you have to go through the training.
Is the training regimented by the feds in any way? Do you have none at all?
No, it's a state certification.
Strictly every state
Every
is
state.
to it.
Yeah.
Correct.
And they're going to say how many hours you need in sensitivity
Correct.
training or whatever.
Whatever the case may be.
You know,
Yeah. Mhm.
handling of firearms or whatever.
Absolutely.
All that's going to be state minimums.
Correct.
Right.
And then you take the state minimums and you've added to it for our local academy.
We have. And then, so for example, if somebody comes in from, let's take Michigan, and is transferring, wants to be a lateral with the sheriff's office.
All right.
We have to look at the training standards that Michigan has. And if they don't meet Arizona standards, then that deputy or that cross-trained officer is going to have to take X amount of hours of training to be able to challenge that curriculum.
Oh,
Yes.
Mhm.
So it's not a,
that's good to know.
yeah, it's not a walk.
Now, what about a city council? Like a city council says, we have our own police force, and I like all the training, but I want to add something. I want a few hours of this training. Is that something they can do? The council can do?
Council can ask for certain
Okay.
things, and that would be more of a in-house policy.
Right.
That the council would have to ask their chief and say, hey, we would like to see X amount of hours of sensitivity training, like you just
Okay.
mentioned. And that would be something that has to be in-house. And if it's something that would benefit the academy, then we can look at it and go from there. But that would, a council asking for something direct would have to go to the agency direct.
Agency direct.
Correct.
And if that agency, could they go to you for the training itself if it's available?
If it's available, if we have the officers to be able to train in
Yeah.
that area.
Or they could actually bring in an instructor from the outside to come in, which has been done throughout
If
the
it's
whole of
something
the
not-
U.S.
Correct.
Not within
Yeah.
your norm
Mhm.
Right. Yeah.
or whatever.
So,
All right. Let's see. This is for Sheriff Wilmot. I don't want to put my foot in my mouth. That's a good way to start a question.
none of us do.
Okay. Ask about the Shaiti Creek. What is that? Is that and the
Oh, Shit Creek.
Yeah, I know.
The conflict.
Oh, are you allowed to say that on
the
Oh my gosh. FCC is giving that
You
to me.
can't even say that. And the trash that people are leaving, would you?
Yeah.
I'd be devastated if they close the area. And of course, that's where the confluence is.
Oh, yeah.
And, all that kind of
It's-
stuff.
Yeah, we work with BLM a lot on that and Bureau of Reclamation because the river corridor
Yeah.
and a lot of that area is BLM land down there.
I'm shocked by
It's
what
kinda-
people dump. It's just amazing.
So you should be down on the border where the illegals are
Well,
crossing.
I've
I
seen
mean
that
that's
too.
it's an environmental catastrophe down there. It's
Yeah,
terrible that's
that's-
happening. But we work with our BLM rangers on a lot of that stuff going on
I see
along the levee down
couches
there.
and mattresses, you name
It's
it.
ridiculous, and quite a bit of that is actually city annexed as well down there.
Yeah.
So the city has a large portion of the river.
We have a free county drop off for any trash.
I
Anything you
don't
want.
get it. I don't.
Couches, mattresses, household clippings, whatever you want.
Yeah,
And they take the time to go out into 4-wheel drive country
Yeah.
and
go out
destroy
there
it.
and and we see it out in the foothills area out in the South Desert as well, and it's something that we try to target. I've actually got our SAR and volunteer units doing not only patrols for individuals that might be in need of rescue out in the desert areas, but also to be a deterrent to that element that wants to go out there and dump their stuff. We get those calls out in the south part of the county too, where individuals are spotted dumping. And it's important to know that a lot of people think that dumping even their tree trimmings is not illegal. It is, because you're trespassing on somebody else's property and dumping garbage. Just go to the dump. It's free. County.
It is free here.
Yeah.
Not every county has it free.
No, they don't.
Yeah.
And ours does.
Yeah.
So yeah, it doesn't make much sense.
It doesn't.
But we try to get our personnel. I mean, you look at Yuma County as a whole, 5,500 square miles, and I've got 95 deputies to
So
try to cover that 24 hours a day,
what's-
7 days a week.
What's your problem? Johnny, give me my violin.
COVID, that's it.
That's a
COVID,
COVID
yeah,
problem.
yeah.
Hey, I got a training question. And training police officers and all that, what happens when you pull somebody over and you get a real irate guy that says, you pulled me over just because I'm black or something, or starts throwing accusations at it? How's an officer trained to handle that? Is it ignored? Is it just moving forward? What do you?
we're working on a lot of IPC skills, interpersonal communication skills, trying to de-escalate the situation.
Correct.
You talk to the person. You don't yell at the person. You don't escalate.
Even if they're yelling at you, you don't match it.
You don't match it because that only makes the situation even worse. So we train on.
It makes a better YouTube, by the way, too. When one guy's screaming, you can say, "Well, thank you, sir. Have a nice day." I kind of like that.
And the officer and the deputy controls the situation. If they're irate, if they completely go 180, you've got to be able to keep calm. And it's easier said than done.
Sure.
But you've got to be able to maintain.
Do you practice that? Do you do role play?
There's a lot of role playing, a lot of scenarios, a lot of irate traffic stops. We handle a lot of this stuff because and that's the great thing about having a local academy. We've got our local officers, our local instructors instructed in our academies. We have our SMEs that they're seeing this day in, day out. They're actually working the road. We don't have retired guys that are, been retired for 5-10 years and want to come in and instruct. These are all active, current law enforcement officers training in our academy.
I did a ride along with the city one time, which was really eye opening and really interesting. And the officer pulled somebody over, and it was a gang member, which you can drive when you're a gang member. It's nothing illegal about it. That's not why he pulled him over. But he ended up taking photographs of the guy's tattoos. Is that a normal thing?
Yeah.
They advertise for the gang, and you want to register that they're here.
Well, it's a good way to identify that person because sometimes individuals actually give us false names and date of birth.
Get out of here.
I know. It's terrible. But so if you're trying to identify an individual that was involved in a crime and the victim says, the guy had this kind of tattoo, if you're able to look into your database on known gang members who affiliate themselves, self-affiliate, that's even better, and it helps us track down the suspects because it provides a positive ID. And we do that in the jail as well. All tattoos are photographed. We do an iris scan in the jail.
And the guy didn't end up getting a ticket or anything, and he seemed to cooperate, not mind showing his tattoos. It was kind of like, let me lift my shirt up and I'll show you. I got a nice one on my front.
And those are consensual encounters. A lot of times it's just the demeanor of the officer, establishing that rapport and having a normal conversation.
Right.
And they educate you on what those tattoos mean. I mean, it's all like you said, interpersonal skills.
Well, it surprised me. It seemed to work out.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think I'm going.
It's not always like that.
Well, maybe I'll write again. Maybe I'll get a different one.
Yeah. So it's a different dynamic for us in law enforcement. So you talk about the consequence deliveries and stuff that the restrictions that are being placed on our federal partners now. I was talking with Johnny about it, is the fact that as a sheriff, I actually cross-deputize some of our federal partners. Because the important thing to remember is without a consequence of delivery, that criminal element is going to continue. Mm-hmm. So, for instance, when we had a large number of individuals that were smuggling hard narcotics into this country and the U.S. attorney wouldn't charge for those crimes, they just seized the dope and sent the individuals back into Mexico. Well, if they're not going to get punished, then what's to stop them from doing it again?
There's a lot less risk in traveling drugs.
And using juveniles as well to do this, because the cartels tell the kids, you're not going to get arrested by the feds because feds won't charge a juvenile for a crime. Okay.
Yeah, we get a lot of that.
We do. And so I cross-deputized our DEA agents and some of our Border Patrol agents.
That wasn't under Obama.
Oh, yeah, I started. It started under when Ralph Ogden was sheriff.
When Ralph Ogden. So
0506 is when all that started.
So is it something that the Border Patrol has to agree with to do, or
they asked for that?
They asked for that,
right?
Okay.
And this way, if a U.S. attorney won't charge, and there's a statute in the state, they can actually take that case to the county attorney.
Is that going on to the state?
Under my color of authority as a sheriff?
Oh. And
get charges on that individual, put them into jail.
I asked you about that once when I was a supervisor, and we were talking budgets, and you were talking about how much money you spent arresting people that the feds were releasing, and it was like a lot of money. It was $1 million.
It is, yeah. It's about an average of 1.2 million.
And I said, well, should our taxpayers really pay for that? And you set up a little straighter in your chair and something about protecting our community that didn't matter to you. I said, yes, sir. I understand. I understand, but you have a commitment to protect this community.
Oh, that's the bottom line. That's why
Yeah.
you're elected, is the
Right.
whole main goal. And we're given a gift in law enforcement, no matter whether you work for a city or a county. I mean, we're given a gift that not many careers are out there, and that's the ability to improve the quality of life for individuals in our community. No matter whether it's just one person in a day where you're able to go out and help them or get them resources that they otherwise would not have been able to know was out there, it is for us a gift to be able to go out and do that. And that's what I encourage my troops is like, look, as a deputy, you're deputized by me to be out on the street, get to know your community, get to know their needs, work with your squads and try to do what's needed in that community to help improve that quality of life. And not everywhere in the county is the same. And that's why we tried to put officers in their districts of where they live, because they have a pulse on that community. Yeah. So that helps. And especially with fuel costs too, they're already there in their community when they go 10-8 to go to work.
Sally Kaiser wants to know why you don't shut the border down.
Well, we're doing what we can.
Okay.
Without me going to federal jail, because
there would be a problem. I mean, there's a limitation.
Well, yeah. Oh, there is. Absolutely, there is. You look at a lot of our border; it's all federal land.
Right.
It's all controlled by the feds.
Still in Yuma County.
It's still in the county, but as you recall, when 1070 came into place, what happened?
It was over. Well, part of it was overturned, but part of it wasn't.
And the biggest part had to do with the immigration.
Right.
Period. So the U.S. versus Arizona took away our ability because of the states gave federal supremacy to the federal government. The states did that. So
the state of Arizona,
all states.
Okay.
So once you became a state, you were part of the federal, and federal has supremacy in regards to enforcement of certain laws.
Yeah.
Correct.
And they're in charge of immigration.
I cannot do anything that's immigration related. And that was part of the problem that we were running into, is even the smuggling. So if our deputies go to a house and find out it's a stash house, there's not nothing you can do
except for possession. Possession is still a state law.
Possession of what?
Narcotics.
Well, I'm talking about people.
Oh, people.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I can do narcotics. That's any day of the week.
Right.
But if you find a stash house of individuals that entered the country illegally and didn't want to be caught,
that's federal, not state.
It's a smuggling.
Yeah.
And we lost that ability because the U.S. claimed federal supremacy.
Right.
Anything to do with immigration, they pull federal supremacy, period.
But if they have fentanyl on them, then that's a different deal.
Yeah, you're going to jail.
Okay.
So individuals that are trespassing, if I have an individual that wants to be a victim of that trespass, then yeah. We've been working with our farmers on that because that's a serious concern for us.
They're causing damage to crops.
Absolutely. And you look at water right now and the cost that is going up.
Yeah.
And food safety is obviously critical.
Yep.
So that's one of the things that we've gotten with the farmers down there along the river corridor in regards to the criminal damage, the trespassing, and being able to enforce that. So unfortunately for law enforcement, and it's kind of hampered us. So we've all sat down locally, all the law enforcement, along with the county attorney, to discuss all the different options that we have available to us.
Good relationship with the county attorney? Are you? Okay. You feel like your voice is heard and you get.
Oh, absolutely.
You're not dealing with somebody like an LA county attorney.
No, no, we're not. Thank God. Because we've all got really good working relationships with the county attorney, the board of supervisors, the mayor, the council. You know,
I'm gonna take a break. When I get back, I want to talk about how many officers you need, how many are you getting, what the qualifications are, and why do people that want to be officers, they get told no. We'll be right back. AM 560 KBLU. Back with you. It's Thursday morning, 8:31. Sheriff Leon Wilmot was with me, and Alfonso from the Academy, director of the Academy. Before I went to break, I wanted to talk about people that maybe want a career in law enforcement or being a jailer or whatever it is. But I know there's a nationwide shortage. I mean, they don't have to defund the police. The police are leaving in some areas, and
I can't blame them because the agenda that those politicians are interjecting.
I don't know how the ones that stay. But when police officers pull you over and they can tell you exactly how many days they got till retirement, there's a morale problem.
There's a serious morale problem, yeah. And that's a shame. It truly is a shame because, and like I mentioned earlier, for the media to promote that is a false narrative. It really is.
The morale problem?
No, they're promoting that false narrative on anti-police rhetoric, and that causes the morale to go down.
I think there is some anti-police on some political issues.
There is. I mean,
but it's a minor issues, but
and there's not an agency out there that doesn't have issues. I mean, I'm the first one to tell you that. We've all had our problems, but you work diligently to not keep that individual employed.
Yeah. How disappointed do you get when you have an employee that you find out is less than responsible and respectable?
It's really disappointing, especially after you put such an investment into an individual you look at to bring on an officer, from the application to the offer of employment, it's probably about 3 months that our employees are invested in doing the background, doing all the research, doing the testing, making sure that they're also not only physically able to perform that job, but mentally able to handle that, going through the polygraph and the mental aptitude tests that go along with it, psychological exams, all that's included when you try to bring an officer on. And then you hand that individual over once you've accomplished all that to the academy. And then once they graduate that academy after 800 and some odd hours of training and practical exercise, you're looking at probably a year before that individual actually hits the street.
And when they hit the street after 1 year, is that alone or are they usually with a partner?
Well, part of that is that year is also you're doing field training with another officer from that agency to be able to go through all the policy and procedures of that agency that are in place, take them out on the street, judge them, watch their interactions to make sure that they are doing what's appropriate for that entity and what's required of them. So for anybody to go through all of that and then us invest that amount of time and energy getting that individual certified and then out on the street to do what's right for the community, to have that happen, it's a pretty heavy hit for all of us.
Yeah.
I've always had even in the Marine Corps, I would rather work with quality than quantity, because I do not, and neither do any of the other troops, want to sit there and spend time cleaning up a mess that otherwise should have been taken care of the very first time. It's non-productive. And when everybody has to clean up somebody's mess, no matter what career you're in, it's non-productive to the morale as well, or the community.
When you decide, you're interviewing people and you get a list of people, they interview well, I like these guys. And let's say, you out of 100, how many do you actually pass the background and psych tests and all that stuff?
Usually when you get 100 applicants that show up for testing, you will probably lose 50%.
50%.
On your initial physical and written test.
Oh, just on the testing.
Just on the testing.
Before you do background.
Before you even get to the background. Yeah. So at the end of the day, you might be able to offer 5 to 8 conditional offers. And then once they start the background, you'll start losing these individuals. And you might hire 2 or 3.
Yeah.
And that's what makes it very difficult.
And I know a lot of questions come up, particularly in marijuana, and marijuana was mentioned here. Now, marijuana is legal in this state.
It is legal, but as a peace officer, you cannot partake in that activity.
But I have a medical marijuana card, Sheriff. I'm allowed to. Yeah, you just can't be a police officer.
No, not by as post rules, and not by any law enforcement agencies.
If somebody has a past though of smoking marijuana,
the background of marijuana for an applicant can't have done more than 21 times prior to the age of 18. Anything after that would be considered a disqualifier.
So if somebody smokes marijuana after 18, they're not going to be a police officer.
There is a timeline.
There is.
There is, and it's a 3-year timeline, and especially then it requires the sheriff or the chief to request that waiver through Arizona Post.
Yeah.
So it's not a guaranteed.
So if somebody smoked marijuana in college, they got through college, a totally different guy, spent some time in the military, ended up going and wanted to be a police officer, there's a waiver for that?
There is a waiver that would require the sheriff or the chief, the head of that agency, to go and talk to Arizona Post and request it.
Okay.
Again, that is always a hard.
I mean, you want real people on the police force too. There's people that have made mistakes.
Absolutely. Yeah. You know, everybody's made a mistake. Some got caught and some didn't.
Yeah.
But, and that's why you'll see a lot of law enforcement getting their officers into the schools and still putting them over there at the schools as much as they can, because you build that rapport and then kids ask you that. That's why we have the Explorer programs to get kids looking into that type of career. We've got some deputies that work for us now that started out as explorers.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And not only are they with this agency, or they went with another law enforcement entity, whether state, local, or federal. And it's because they were explorers, or they got exposed to officers that were walking through their school, you know, just getting educated. But it's important that individuals know that all your actions can hamper your career in the future. So you have to be cognizant of,
make that decision early on.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And that's a huge thing with AWC, working with the STEADY program with Tom Tyree and that group over there, that they're pushing law enforcement into part of their curriculum, their AJS stuff. So they can know and understand that, you know, you start early, you start teaching them, you start giving them the basic information so they don't follow a different path. And, you know, when they get to the age, they can join the detention academy and move on to be a deputy or an officer.
Are you having a problem getting applicants at this point?
Oh, we all do.
Okay.
I mean, it's knock on wood. Our attrition rate right now for our patrol bureau is maybe 7 or 8. So remember what I talked about earlier, quality versus quantity. Right. And you have to look for those individuals that are truly in it for doing what's right for the community, and they're not there for a career jump where they're going to move from agency to agency to agency.
Oh, okay.
You want somebody that's not in it for just the pay. Obviously, any kind of law enforcement, you're not going to get rich. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it's about the individual and what they're really there for, and their work environment. That helps a lot. Now, detention's a whole different ballgame, because trying to recruit for working in that environment and finding an individual that can deal with that environment is
I don't think
it's pretty rough.
Would understand what that really is.
And that's why I always say those are the unsung heroes. There's our detention officers that work in the jail, and what they have to deal with on every daily basis, people would not believe.
There's a lot of people that are eggshells out there. They, you know, if someone calls them a name, they're gonna react. You know, you can't do that in your possession, I don't think.
No,
Okay.
You got to have pretty thick skin.
So we can call you any names we want. You're not necessarily going to come after us.
You know,
I'm not going to try it. Just saying.
There are a few names where if you holler it out, there's quite a few that law enforcement that will look, thinking that they're calling them.
Yeah. Yes. Exactly. I've heard that.
But yeah, it's all part of the job. You know.
But how do you? Do people come in with that level-headedness, and or is that something that's trained?
It's something that's trained. You know, we see it in our current academies with our younger generation. They're not used to being called names. They're not used to.
Right. People want to puff up all of a sudden.
Correct. It just throws them off.
You're talking to me.
and a lot of our you know, first thing we tell them when they come into this academy is, you're going to learn a lot.
Yeah.
We're going to give you the tools, but it's your responsibility to be mentally prepared for this job. We can give you all the tools we can, but if you cannot handle this, if you cannot mentally prepare yourself for violence, for possibly taking somebody's life or your life being taken.
Yeah.
You need to reconsider this because the possibility is out there. And fortunately, and I will say fortunately, we have young ladies and young men that say, I'm out. I can't do this because I don't want to get hurt or I don't want to get one of my partners hurt. And I appreciate that when we're in the academy.
And getting hurt's part of most jobs out there. You just, it's not as well advertised but most people have a great career and don't even pull their firearm.
Correct.
And as an officer.
You look at it, it's like the national average, I think, is 1.5 officer to 1,000.
Really?
So we're obviously the sheriff's office, we're well below that. I mean, we should have probably double what we have now, just looking at the national average.
And what do you attribute that to? Is it training or just a nice community?
Well, attribute the fact that the county doesn't have the budget, for one, to be able to give me that amount of officers.
Yeah, I've heard
that.
The
one thing that our board has done is work with us to give me at least 2 positions each year to try to get us up to more personnel out there to be able to respond to the needs of the community. God bless our volunteer units.
I was going to say, you've got a great volunteer.
They have allowed us to do so much in our community, and they're volunteering our time.
They're visible. I mean, when you go to events and things where the volunteers are, I mean, they're wearing the county uniform.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
The deputies, and
our volunteers go through the same training to be able to do that on a smaller scale. Yeah, exactly.
They'd have to know that they represent.
Yeah. So you're looking at the year time frame to get an officer on the road, being able to get them, and then that they have to understand, much like the military, you're going to sign a blank check, and that's sacrificing yourself for your community and what you do. So,
and that takes a special thought process. Are we finding fewer and fewer people now? You think, in generationally, less people that want to do this type of work?
It's not been glamorized very much in the media, and
not since
obviously 9/11. You got your social media out there also pushing that agenda, so that has a lot to do with that. Probably more so in the cities than in rural America.
I'm surprised they can find anybody in some of these cities.
Oh, it would be. I wouldn't do it in New York. Of course, I'd be fired as a police chief a long time ago, but that's why I've always said I could never be a chief of police.
But it's not that it couldn't be done. Look what Rudy Giuliani did to New York, and New York was tough when Giuliani took over.
Look at how many officers are leaving that agency now.
Now they are.
When you get a mass exodus like they're getting now,
but under Rudy Giuliani, they liked it.
Yeah, well, they had support.
And they were protecting communities. They were getting something accomplished. I think that's our Border Patrol right now. The disappointment and the lack of morale has to do with they're not allowed to do their job.
Well, that's why I tell everybody, when you see a Border Patrol agent, thank them. I do, personally, when I run into them out there. It's just like the narrative now that they're pushing on the AR-15s and all this other stuff. It's like, we in law enforcement have been trying to get even our electeds in Arizona to start addressing the root causes, and that's mental illness.
I want to talk.
Half of the people in our jail have been identified as having a mental deficiency.
I think half the people in this room are. But let me take a break, and we'll be back. I want to talk about firearms. AM 560, KBLU.
Good morning, Yuma.
And
that's a chamber greeting.
That's you're allowed.
Good morning, Yuma. Yeah, absolutely.
And it's an Alfonso.
Yes, sir.
Alfonso Zavala.
Chachi.
Yeah, you do it, Chachi. It's okay. And the director of the academy. And I want to talk about firearms a little bit. And when I first got my concealed weapon permit, when it was allowed and all that, they told us in class that if you ever pulled up by police officers, just let them know you have a concealed weapon permit and you're carrying a firearm. So I got pulled over, unfortunately. I wasn't doing anything. I don't think. I ain't a racist cop. But wow. But he pulled me over, and I just told him, I said something. Well, I have a concealed weapon permit, and I do have a firearm. He said, well, good for you. And he just went to this thing. No big deal. Yeah. But police officers don't. I mean, they seem to embrace, not to be excited. I mean, I was a little nervous saying, I was thinking like California, give me to lay down on the ground or something, and maybe pat me down. I didn't know. Yeah. But it's you don't have a problem with the public being.
No, and Arizona's open carry now too, so
Yes.
you really don't even need the concealed carry permit. in
Right.
Arizona.
How much of a concern is it for you to have the population that's armed?
Not much.
Okay.
You know, and you think about it, it's like a lot of officers, especially rural. We talked about that earlier.
Mm-hmm.
You're out there by yourself,
Right.
and who usually is the first thing to stop and help you?
Oh yeah, residents. Yeah,
Somebody on the street.
Sure.
You know, and we've seen cases even by Phoenix where a civilian has stopped and engaged the bad guy who was engaging an officer on the side of the road.
Yeah, they show up in the
So,
news occasionally like that. Where
It all has to do with the fact that, that is your Second Amendment right.
right.
And it shall not be infringed. And I mean, when I went to high school, we had rifles in our vehicle. I mean, nobody thought about doing a school shooting, none of that stuff.
Nah.
And that's why I came out against this narrative that these individuals keep pushing, and that's to restrict your right to own firearms. Doesn't matter what kind it is.
And there's a big push socially narrative now in some major cities, particularly that we have evil firearms, violent. It's always gun violence, and I have non-violent guns in my house, but they're defensive weapons. Guns.
Oh, it's a tool.
It's a tool.
It is.
But we're trying to label it as its own entity. And even this latest horrific shooting on July 4th, that the gentleman, the sick individual that bought these firearms, did so legally within the confines of the law in the neighborhood, and that's in Illinois, one of the most restrictive gun areas in the country. And they're saying they want more gun control because gun control is the reason this guy went nuts.
Right. And, in seeing the media push the false narrative on, they were trying to get a gentleman to say, was this an assault rifle?
Right.
And he wouldn't say assault rifle. And he kind of kept pushing him, this congressman. And it was just, why are we doing this to our country? Why are we pushing this false narrative?
It's control.
Yeah. And Bill Clinton had that assault rifle banned for a while, and it did change it. There was
you look at even the Ninth Circuit Court overruled the fact that California was restricting the magazines.
Right.
And now you have these other states that are trying to do the same thing. When the Ninth Circuit Court, the most liberal court in the nation, has even told California, you can't do that. It's a violation. I mean, I think Ronald Reagan said it best. And I keep this quote with me.
Okay.
It says, "We must reject the idea that every time a law is broken, society is guilty rather than the law breaker. It is time to restart the American precept that each individual is accountable for his or her actions."
I like that.
That was Ronald Reagan. And when I read that, I thought, you know what? That speaks volumes, especially now. And to me, it's like, all of these large cities where a lot of this gun violence is going on and people are getting killed each and every day, that they're pushing this agenda on. Those are cities that have the most strictest gun laws. You look at Mexico. Right.
Oh.
They have the most strictest gun laws compared to anywhere.
Unless you can buy
and the only ones that have those weapons are the bad guys.
And they have military training, military weapons.
Yes. In law enforcement, I'll tell you what, most people would not want to go try to do a home invasion or a burglary or a car theft, a carjacking, if there was a probability that that person might be armed.
Correct.
So, when you're just further victimizing the citizens out there by further restricting their ability to protect themselves. Law enforcement officers are going to respond, but they're not going to get there in time in a lot of cases on something that's a violent actor.
Right.
It's just the truth. And citizens should be able to have whatever's available to protect themselves and their family.
Do you like known as an officer to know that there is a firearm in a car if you pull it over?
Absolutely.
Is it good information?
It is. Our recommendation is that if you're stopped, keep your hands on the steering wheel. For one, and just tell the officer that, hey, I have a firearm that's located wherever in the vehicle. And then the officer will actually ask you to do certain things. This way, everybody's safe.
And of course, that's depending on the officer, I would assume.
Absolutely.
The officer I told I had a gun too said, yeah, so what? And, he's just basically good for you.
Yeah.
And it didn't seem to concern him at all.
No.
And maybe it was my demeanor. I don't know.
But
would it be unusual for him to say, well, let's put that on the hood of the car for everyone's safety or something?
They would probably ask you, okay, if you don't mind, go ahead and exit the vehicle, step over here. I'm going to obtain it.
Yeah.
And what they would do is unload it, run it, make sure it's not a stolen weapon.
Okay.
And then they would give it back to you after they're done with their stop, whether it's a Terry stop or whatever the case may be.
Then, you got that from Black Cloud, yeah.
But in all cases, I mean, they're all cordial. It's just an officer safety thing.
And do citizens respond to that well?
Mm-hmm. I've never had an issue with.
I mean, I wouldn't have an issue, but I didn't know if the general person, don't touch my firearm, or I got rights, or
it never had it. It's all on your interpersonal skills and how you make contact. It's all on their demeanor too. I mean, you have to monitor that also.
And you could tell that when you pull up, can't you? I mean, if there's somebody that's nervous, agitated.
Oh yeah.
Are you gonna handle them differently?
You're always on guard.
Okay.
You should always be on guard, I should say. Never be complacent, because you really don't know.
Right.
And that's part of the stop is you have to try to gauge the individual's actions from years of experience and what you're taught at the academy, and that just grows through your career. But the situation dictates how things are handled.
How many domestics do you get called on often? I mean, is it 10% of what you do, 5%?
Oh, it's a large percentage.
It is large.
It is, yeah.
And
a lot of it has to do with individuals that have consumed some
alcoholic
beverages.
Yeah, frosty libations or something.
Well, and I get it, because and COVID was no help to all of this, but individuals were not able to go to work. They're trying to figure out how to pay their bills. The kids, they don't have money to be able to afford the babysitter anymore, to be able to go to work, because everything changed. And to a certain extent, we're still seeing some of that with individuals that still haven't been able to get back to work.
Can't adjust yet.
And are having a hard time with that. So a lot of it has to do with that.
And that's one of your least favorite calls, I would imagine.
Least favorite. It's one of the most dangerous for law enforcement officers to respond to is domestics.
When you go into that thing, do you have to make a decision as far as who am I going to ask to leave the house, stay in the house, those kind of things, to separate them, or if I do separate them?
Well, you try to separate them initially anyway, because you want to get both sides of the story. That's not going to be inhibited from that other party being right there. And it de-escalates the tempers.
Right.
As well,
at least temporarily.
And then you have to gauge on what actual action had taken place,
who's
versus
bleeding
what
or
you're
bruised.
being told.
Yeah.
And then there are certain cases where you don't have a choice in the matter. The one that started, it's going to end up going to jail, because statute dictates that.
And you can differentiate generally about, well, it was mutual,
Sometimes they both go to jail, because then it would be disorderly conduct on both their parts, because they were both just as guilty as the other.
Do they generally calm down when you guys arrive?
Sometimes. I mean, it's up and down. Just depends on what the situation is.
And we do a lot of training on that, and we partnered with Amberley's Place. Again, another reason why we love having our academy here is because we can partner with all our locals. With Amberley's Place, they come out and role play for us. And,
they do.
And they give us information for our deputies, officers on what to expect for certain situations. So, it's always great to have them on board, and it's a great partnership. And we deal with a lot of DV stuff and give them different scenarios when it comes to stuff like that.
Well, Sheriff Alfonso, I appreciate it. Thank you so much for coming in. I think it's been helpful answering some questions. Law enforcement's become a high visibility right now, and there's some confusion out there about
there is. And in all cases, I mean, I encourage individuals to get a hold of their local law enforcement agency and ask those questions. And with technology now, you can ask it on the Facebook or the Twitter.
You've answered some questions on your phone while you've been in here.
Yeah, exactly. It never stops.
And there's still the city still has ride-alongs you can do to get to know, and I think those are helpful
they're starting to start back up again, but now COVID's starting to be an impact on
Oh, I didn't think about
agencies'
COVID.
ability to be able to do that.
Yeah.
So it ebbs and flows just according to what's current situation.
Gentlemen, thank you. I'll be back tomorrow, AM 560 KBLU.